Part 88. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 875. Another room. Bolen hugged the quilt and huddled on the bed warily, looking at everything around him. After she passed out drunk, she found herself lying on this bed. No one paid attention to her, and the door to the room was locked and could not be opened. At this moment, a familiar cry suddenly came from the next door. "It's Clint," she was pleasantly surprised. Climbing and rolling, he clung to the wall and listened carefully. "Clint. Is that you?" she shouted. The crying next door suddenly became quieter, and after a while, a timid voice came over. "Is it Xiaolun?" "It's really you," Buran suddenly felt at ease. "Okay, little girl, you are all right. I checked the location. You are now thousands of kilometers away from the previous store. It is a temporary hotel." Chayu's voice wavered to in her mind. "Clint, what's wrong with Clint? Why are he crying so sadly?" The kind-hearted Buran immediately became concerned about his companions. "He's fine. He just encountered a small setback in his life." Chayu didn't know how to explain it. "What should happen has already happened. Is it really okay?" Bolen was still worried. "Don't worry, how can a man say no to this little pain?" Chayu comforted. "The person who saved you has left. You'd better get up immediately and check the surrounding geographical environment. This is just a temporary settlement. Except for you, there is no other living thing around, no food or drink. If you don't think of a way quickly, you will starve to death here. Don't blame me for not warning you." These words rang in their minds at the same time. The two of them had already developed the habit of distinguishing when Chiyu was telling the truth and when he was lying. At this time, they naturally heard that what Chiyu said was indeed true. "Really?" He immediately got up from the bed quickly, and Clint even found the clothes around him and put them on. "Open the door and go out. The bright golden sunlight shines down viciously and shines on the skin, causing a burning pain. The surrounding area is simply a desert, with only yellow-green grassland and occasionally meandering streams. The weird thing is, the water in these creeks is green, and a fine green mist faintly evaporates." The whole surrounding was dead silent, not even a fly could be seen. Bolen looked into the distance, and could faintly see a man in a stylish leather jacket riding a motorcycle on the horizon, quickly driving away. The motorcycle eerily made no sound. "That man saved you. This place was supposed to be an abandoned hut, and he used it as a temporary resting place," Chayu explained in a low voice. "What should we do now?" Bolen suddenly felt a little thirsty. "Find a way to survive first," Chayu replied solemnly. "The water here is not drinkable, it is highly poisonous, and there are no living creatures, which means you can't even eat radioactive meat. Fortunately, I brought some food and drink in my space button. We can still support it for a while, but within a week, if you can't find a way to solve the dietary problem, then you will starve to death in this radioactive wasteland." Is this the radiation belt? Bolen felt the cruelty of the radiation belt for the first time, whether it was the betrayal of the seemingly amiable elder sister and the yellow-bearded uncle, or the current embarrassing situation where even eating was a problem. When, even eating and drinking it has become a matter of life and death. Just think of it as an exercise for yourself, Chayu sighed. This is also the main reason why most people in the radiation belt do not live to be 70 or 80 years old. They cannot drink water to ensure their health. Their food mostly comes from very few planting areas and meat with low radioactivity in the bodies of many radioactive mutated beasts. Many times, a mutated beast the size of a buffalo may only be able to eat a fist-sized piece of meat. After a life and death fight, what you get is only a meal's worth of food, which can only be eaten by one person. Listening to Chayu's introduction, Buran gradually understood the cruelty and hardship of the radiation belt wasteland. "If it were my brother, what would he do?" she murmured softly. "Your brother will probably live a more relaxed life." Chayu recalled the guy who even looked at him wrongly. That guy is an extremely cruel person at heart. After walking around the inner courtyard for several times, Garin failed to meet the boy from the administration bureau, and the girl nicknamed Goldfish was nowhere to be seen, and Fella seemed to have heard someone say that she was attending some ceremony. After going to the library to learn some general knowledge, Garin finally had a clear understanding of the entire inner courtyard. It can be said that the inner courtyard is the most real and cruel side of the Black Pen Academy. The outer courtyard can only be used as a place to cultivate military and government talents. It is too gentle, and the inner courtyard is the true embodiment of the cruel competition mechanism. Everything requires quest points, training, buying things, dueling, everything. Of course, if you have money, you can pay with universal points, but even ordinary billionaires can't afford this price. The price of ordinary goods is twice as high as that outside. But for many precious things, you can pay with universal points. It is often calculated by millions and tens of millions, but it is much cheaper to buy by mission points. Obviously, the entire inner courtyard revolves around the mission point. The professors and instructors in the inner courtyard are all aloof, staying in their own areas and rarely going out, or in other words, they will not be seen when they go out. Only students are active in the inner courtyard. Professors and instructors will not participate in the competition among students. If they die or become useless, they will be sent out and go home. Maybe you will be assigned a sinecure. The entire inner courtyard students are divided into three major gangs, namely the Black Star faction headed by Black Star, the Black Rain faction headed by Red-Eyed Metro and three other people, and Leo led by the exchange students. There are many other organizations of different sizes, and there are also many strong individual people among them, such as Phyla. Garin learned that there are also many teams like Enda that are temporarily organized for missions, and most of them are not very close. Will only work together when a task is needed. There are at least 20 such teams in the inner courtyard. Every year, batches of senior students from the Big 5, 6th and above enter the inner courtyard. Because only the inner courtyard has the resonance data that can break through to the 6th inheritance level, so even though many people know that there are dangers and anomalies inside, they still keep coming. Rush in and look for opportunity. The life of students in the inner courtyard is very simple. Mission after mission, constantly accumulating resources needed for mechas, resources needed for various technologies, and resources needed for training methods. In addition to tasks, you need to complete open class environment training every once in a while. If you can't complete it, it will consume a lot of task points. If you don't have enough task points, you can only get out of the inner courtyard and clean out all the problems related to resonance. Memory. 2 points, tasks, and open classes. Open classes are more like exams than courses, used to filter out batches of students who fail to pass the test, while tasks are the process of constantly training students. Instructors and even some external tasks will continue to be released to the elite students of the inner academy. Those who can survive in this environment are undoubtedly far superior to the top elites of the outer academy. Here, mission points are everything. They can be traded, penalties can be paid, and many technologies and materials that the outside world has never heard of can be purchased. The relationship between students and instructors is not so much that of teachers and students, but rather a one-to-many technical knowledge transaction point. Tutors are like selling points for various technical knowledge, providing students with a lot of secret and sophisticated knowledge. These technical knowledge students can also be traded and exchanged among themselves. The instructors also turned a blind eye. In this way, as long as you follow a high-level and powerful instructor or professor and trade the knowledge and technology you buy from him, you can gain a lot of mission points. This is also the key difference between high and low salary. Garin compared his teacher Fan Duo. He was at the middle level in the inner courtyard and was very well hidden. However, there were very few instructors and professors in the inner courtyard who were not well hidden. So on the surface Fan Duo only has the 5th level strength of Xuanjiao level, but in fact no one knows how deep his real background is. Professors like him, there are 20 or 30 people in the inner courtyard, can't see the depth clearly. After preliminary understanding of various aspects of information, Garen also had a general understanding of life in the inner courtyard. Regarding the mission invited by Anda, he also saw the information from the mission area of the library. It was indeed a relatively long journey, requiring him to go to the radiation belt and pilot a mecha. You need to cross a very wide terrain on the way, which takes about half a month to a month. Garen also wanted to visit the radiation belt. Chayu had left a message for him that they had entered the radiation belt. He wanted to go out and see if he could find Klin and the others. There is also red malachite, which also takes time to acquire. After returning to the small villa where his mentor lived, and entering his room, Garen directly dialed Ken's phone number outside. "Boss, just tell me if you have any orders." Ken is now backed by Galen, and is already the boss of a large company. His main business is arranging the transportation of colored stones all day long, and he has won Galen's trust. One is called Moisture, and the entire face on the watch screen has gained a lot of weight, like a smiling Buddha. Immediately purchase the red-colored gemstones on the market. It is best to find a stable supply channel. What's the demand? Let's buy 2 tons from the market first. We'll find a channel and slowly buy out 10% of the profits. We'll report the income and expenditure settlement report every 2 months, Galen said casually. No problem, this is easy to handle. Last time, many retail investors chased me and asked if they needed other colors of colored light. Ken's eyes became slits when he laughed. Then he seemed to think of something. "Boss, although the quantity of other colors of colored stones is relatively large, their purity is relatively low, and the purchase price may be slightly higher than that of white-colored stones. Regardless of funds, time is best." Galen thought for a while. "We can also purchase 2 tons of other colored stones and store them in the warehouse to cope with possible calls at any time." Understood. It can be done within 2 months at the earliest. It just takes time to transport it here. After all, the red branch is very wide, and the output in a single place is very small, Ken said with confidence. Obviously he had already arrived. He has mastered many retail channels and knows the information well. "It's okay, as long as I can get it, then I'll wait for your good news. I will handle it." After disconnecting the phone, Garen slowly exhaled. It's time to solve the problem of the goldfish and the boy. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 876. On the top floor of a high-rise building, the strong wind blew Garen's hair and clothes. He stood on the edge of the floor, letting the huge billboard block most of his body, and lowered his head to look down. On the street between the 2 buildings below, among the crowds of people on the sidewalk, several young boys and girls were walking out of a building and walking together along the street towards the motorcycles parked next to them. At a glance, Garen saw a red-haired girl chatting with 2 boys, who was the goldfish he had seen before. Sure enough, the information I got from Anda is quite accurate. That guy Anda is basically an information dealer, and the information he got after spending 100,000 points is still very reliable. Garen raised his watch and looked at his mission point. After I went to the training room, there were only 3 points left. The initial ones were all 20 points. It seems that if we don't get the mission points as soon as possible, we will be in trouble when we wait for the assessment. He lowered his head and stared at the goldfish below. He said goodbye to the 2 boys and walked to his motorcycle with a girl. He turned around and quickly went downstairs. When he arrived downstairs, Goldfish had already driven away from the building area on his motorcycle. Garen had already memorized the terrain of this area clearly, and used alleys and shortcuts to follow the goldfish. His modified body ran at full speed, which was not far different from that of a motorcycle. He kept hanging slowly in the back like this, and soon he saw the goldfish coming to a silver-white spire building. He stopped the motorcycle, turned off the engine, and got out of the car. Garen glanced at the name of the owner of the building, which was marked on the side of the building. Phone sir, according to the information, he is one of the instructors in the inner domain. He is not very eye-catching. After hesitating for a moment, Garen walked out of the alley and strode towards the goldfish at the entrance of the building. The goldfish was pushing open the revolving glass door under the building, but suddenly saw the image behind him in the reflection of the glass. It's that person that day, she was shocked. He actually found me here. How did he find it? She asked her senior brother to help find the information about the other person. Until now, she has not been so fast. She didn't expect that the other person was actually better than her. Even faster. But the good thing is that the thing can be used 3 times. Goldfish put his hand into his trouser pocket and tightened the contents in his pocket, feeling more at ease again. Turning around, she faced him head-on, stepping aside to let others in and out. "Let's talk," came the voice of the man on the other side. Goldfish frowned at this man. He had short black hair, dark blue eyes, and white skin. He looked very fierce. Even a smile at the corner of his mouth gave people a cruel sneer. Temperament. The figure is very strong, and standing there gives people a slight sense of depression. "You move very quickly," Goldfish said coldly. "It's just luck," Garen smiled. "What do you want to talk about?" Jinyu carefully observed the other party's movements and postures. He was so seriously injured last time. Although this guy is strong, he shouldn't do it here, in front of her own mentor's residence building, right? Looking at this person cautiously, Jinyu felt extremely cautious. The other person smiled. "I remember the first time I was hospitalized. You suddenly rushed in and attacked me at night. You almost hit me hard. I came here just to settle the score." Goldfish suddenly remembered the strange young man he met unexpectedly at night, the guy he met suddenly while performing a mission. Even after so long, she still remembers it vividly. "What do you want?" She felt a little nervous. Looking at the other party's calm smile, she seemed to have no intention of doing anything, but for some reason, she felt frightened standing in front of the other party. "As compensation for that night, and the last time I was injured by Phyla, these have to be counted on you." "How many mission points do you have on you?" Garen said calmly. 263 points, is it enough to transfer them all to you? Don't come to trouble me again." Goldfish took a step back, trying to distance himself from the other party. Phyla just passed by chance that day and happened to save her and her senior brother once, but she didn't always have such good luck. "That's it." Garen twisted his neck. "What do you mean, just a few points? We have worked hard for a long time to accumulate such a few points." Goldfish's voice rose a few times, but he immediately suppressed it. "How on earth do you want to let me go? I still have more than 1 million in general, and I can transfer all of it to you. I also have several technologies that I can transfer to you." She knew that if she didn't really solve the matter this time, she would really have no chance of survival. The opponent was simply not something she could deal with at the second level. Originally, Garen came here to get a little understanding of the situation and then find an opportunity to kill the other party. Unexpectedly, this woman seemed so sensible and actually admitted her defeat. This actually made it difficult for him to start. Just as he hesitated, the goldfish spoke again. "Tell me about your conditions. I still have a few downline girls for you to play with, including me. You can do whatever you want, as long as you don't trouble me again. Everything is easy to discuss." "You did it," Garen was slightly stunned. "Yes, otherwise why do you think I have so many mission points?" Goldfish brushed the long hair on his forehead. "I am what you commonly call a flower thorn. Isn't it natural to have a few roses under my hands? The so-called flower thorns are actually women who are pimps and do business in the flesh business. Their subordinates often manage a few girls down the line, but they just change their elegant names. Garen understood it as soon as he heard it. Hawthorne? No wonder you have some savings and means at such a low level. Anyway, I admit defeat. I can kill or chop you into pieces as you please. Goldfish opened his arms and deliberately pushed out his plump breasts. In this case, our matter can be easily solved. Garen smiled slightly. Tell me the personnel information of the administration that took action that day, and then laugh. He suddenly rushed forward, thrusting his fingers forward like hooks. With a pop, a bloody eyeball was gouged out alive from the goldfish's eye socket. The moment she screamed, Garen struck the goldfish on the belly with his palm. The goldfish flew up out of thin air and hit the glass door behind it hard. It didn't break the glass door, but just hit the edge of the door and bounced back. This can be considered as the original grudge has been wiped out. Garen walked over with a smile and stepped on the goldfish's right thigh with a click. Ah! The latter suddenly let out a sharp scream. None of the people passing by came forward to stop them, which showed the cruelty of this place. Most of the people coming in and out avoided the two of them and hurriedly walked away from the place. A fourth-level pilot in such a low-level area would not be willing to take the initiative to cause trouble even if someone could afford it. Most of them avoid it. The goldfish howled in pain, pressing his leg with one hand and covering his eyes with the other. The original beautiful figure suddenly disappeared, leaving only the miserable howl. The sweat caused by the severe pain all over his body wetted a large area of his clothes, and then became gray and black due to the dust on the ground. Garen shook his head slightly. Remember to send me the information. I will do it. Goldfish gritted her teeth, trembling as she spoke. The pain in her body made it almost impossible for her to gather too much energy. There are still mission points, please transfer them to me. 200 points. Forget about the general points, Garen said calmly. After forcing Jinyu to transfer to the mission point and obtain the information about the guy from the administration, Garen walked away from here. I will come to you again if necessary. He waved his hand with his back to the goldfish and left gracefully. The goldfish's low curses could be heard in the distance behind him. Don't think I don't understand. Garen's words immediately frightened the goldfish into shutting up. Lee Kun felt a little uneasy when he came out of the management office. I just received the news that the flower-thorned goldfish was attacked in front of my house. One eye was blind and one leg was lame. The opponent was ruthless and could not re-implant new artificial organs. It was said that special means were used to kill it completely. The surrounding implantable tissue portion is dead. The goldfish almost couldn't even save his life. The most frightening thing is that the opponent's method is as precise as a surgical scalpel, and not even much blood is produced, all of which is internal bleeding. The rescued goldfish remained silent and said nothing. After paying for the treatment, he left the hospital directly. Some people said that the person who did it was a strong man with black hair, tall and fierce looking. This reminded Lee Kun directly of the man he helped Goldfish with not long ago. If he hadn't been seriously injured by Fella accidentally. It can't be that person. He shook his head, walked out of the bureau, greeted several colleagues, and walked to the underground parking lot. That man was seriously injured by senior brother Phyla. No matter how good the treatment method is, it is impossible to recover from his physical injuries so quickly. And according to senior brother Phyla, that person will be disabled even if he does not die in the future. Lee Kun walked in and felt a little embarrassed. In the deserted underground parking lot, he quickly walked to his car and opened the door. Hello. Suddenly, he saw a black-haired man with dark blue eyes sitting in his car. He was reaching out to greet him, showing his white teeth. Lee Kun realized that he had taken the wrong car. Just as he was about to ask, he suddenly felt dizzy. He lowered his head blankly and saw a white arm suddenly appearing on his lower abdomen. It was piercing deeply into his lower abdomen. The blood continued to flow down the trousers, staining the shoes red, and flowed to the ground, forming a small pool of dazzling bright red. Then he saw the other party slowly withdrawing his hand, but there was no trace of blood on it. "Thank you for taking care of me for the kindness I received a few days ago." Garen showed a charming and fierce smile. "You," Likhan covered his abdominal wound in disbelief, but the hole was so big that he could faintly see the ground behind him through his lower abdomen. He knew that it was impossible for him to leave today. "My sister, I won't let you go." He staggered back a few steps and sat down on the ground, his face already becoming paler due to the massive blood loss. With the sound of the car starting up, the hover car aimed at his whole body, drove to the maximum speed, and hit him hard. With a pop, Likhan was directly squeezed between the car and the wall, turning into a blood-red blurry mass of flesh, completely motionless. Galen sat in the driver's seat, turned off the car's engine, and stepped out. He had already disabled the automatic monitoring in the parking lot, and he was not worried about being found guilty of murder and leaving a record. "This is settled, it's Phyla." In the end he took off his gloves, rubbed his cold hands together, and turned towards the exit of the parking lot. It happened that a slender man in white clothes was slowly walking down the slope of the parking lot, with his car keys in his hand. When he saw Galen walking out, his nose twitched slightly, as if he smelled something bad. He couldn't help but take another look at Garen. Garen grinned at him and Shiren walked out of the parking lot. These pilots with strong consciousness are indeed very powerful when they are prepared, but in the event of a sudden attack, their reaction speed and quality are ultimately far inferior to those of secret warriors. The pilot needs to mobilize his consciousness to amplify his body and use it as a means of offense and defense, because his consciousness cannot be used immediately, and his nerves need to be able to react. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 877. These pilots are like weak superpowers, or wizards. When fully prepared, they are powerful, but once they are caught off guard, the scene just now will occur. Likhan didn't even react, and he was killed. Kill instantly with one move. Their bodies are not protected by force fields, have not been genetically enhanced, and are not even comparable to some muscular men. It seems that maybe Phyla should be in the same situation. Maybe we can go and see if there is a chance to make a move. Garen had a plan in his mind. The biggest weakness of pilots is that they cannot maintain their strength at all times like the secret warriors. Their consciousness is equivalent to the bullets in a pistol. They must be refilled after they are used up. Therefore, generally speaking, they are not in a call-up state at any time. That kind of states also consume consciousness. In this way, it is actually not too powerful in its normal daily state, and it probably won't be able to do anything when encountering threats that it is too late to react to. After walking out of the parking lot, Garen looked up at the artificial Sunday. The sun surrounded by a silver ring continued to emit dazzling light. He found the best way to deal with pilots, which was to kill them at close range, so that the opponent would not even have time to react consciously, and then severely damage the opponent. A pilot without the protection of a consciousness force field is just a stronger ordinary person at best. Unlike secret warriors, they don't always have a strong physical defense that is consistent with their own strength level. "Stop!" suddenly a man shouted from behind. Garen ignored it, but suddenly felt a cold feeling behind him. He lowered his head in an instant and mobilized his consciousness to reach out and grab the top of his head. A hard and sharp feeling suddenly spread to his fingertips. Garen immediately retracted his fingers, but they were still scratched a little. Only then did he see clearly what was passing over his head. It was a mechanical bee that looked only about the size of a fist. The whole body of the bee is made of silver-white metal, but the wings on its back are made of non-metallic materials that vibrate at high speed. Some parts of the body are even covered with some kind of flesh and blood, giving people the feeling of a combination of mechanical and biochemical technology. Garen looked at his finger. He didn't know when a layer of skin had been broken on it, and there was faint blood. "I told you to stop," the man's voice behind him sounded again. Garen turned around, completely ignoring the mechanical bee still flying in the air, and looked directly at the man in white chasing after him. "This person is the man who entered the parking lot just now." He looked gloomy at this time, and there was a similar mechanical bee floating next to him. "How courageous you are to dare to kill people in the management office." Garen strangely did not feel any aggressive consciousness from the other person. There was only a defensive film covering the person like a protective shield. "What killing?" "I have no idea, friend." Garen shrugged innocently. "My mouth is on you, so don't just frame a good person. Whether it's a false accusation or not, just come back to the management office with me and you'll find out," the man said before he finished speaking. Garen felt a bad wind rushing towards the back of his head. Without even looking behind him, he lowered his head and kicked off the ground. His whole body was like a compressed spring, sweeping back, drawing a perfect arc, and rushing behind him. The bees missed each other, and even the bees didn't have time to react. He disappeared around the corner of the street in a few quick steps. What an amazing skill! When the man in white saw this scene, his expression suddenly became serious. Even a mechanical bee with a speed of 3 levels can't catch up. His eyes flickered, and he decided not to wade into this muddy water. His opponent this time was not an ordinary person. His response was like that of a veteran who had killed countless people. He was not to be trifled with. Roll. While running rapidly along the edge of the street, Garen felt that there was no sense of being followed behind him, so he gradually slowed down and soon returned to the same posture as a normal shopper, looking left and right. Although the inner courtyard is very chaotic, there are still not many people who openly take action on certain streets where there is a lot of surveillance. You can see people taking action in many places. After a while, someone will come over to maintain order. These people who maintain order are not from the administration. Instead, there were some scattered-looking students, who were obviously the gangs managed here. Wherever you take action, the gangs and managers on that territory will naturally be responsible for dealing with the aftermath. There is no mercy here. Garen walked over and saw a lot along the way. A pure and beautiful young girl with watery eyes was tricked into an alley by a few unscrupulous students. Half a minute later, the screams of several unscrupulous students were heard instead. Several cute girls who seemed to be shopping together had an argument with someone in front of a store. One of the girls got so angry that she slapped a strong-looking man on the bald head, breaking both arms and sending him flying more than 10 meters away. Of course, it's not all such a contrast, but from the looks of it, anyone who dares to just go shopping on the street, none of them is a fuel-saving lamp. They all have strong strength, and last but not least, they have something to protect themselves. The inner courtyard is always in chaos. Even if there is someone in charge of this block, the difference is not very big. Robbery, fights, revenge, high-powered gun shooting, semi-mechanized armor fights, and small spaceship chases. For ordinary weaker people without any special means, even going out on the street is an extremely luxurious thing. Galen was almost affected several times, and even he didn't want to experience the terrifying power of thermal weapons. As he hurried back carefully, he began to think about the methods used by the man he just met. At the same time, I quickly checked it on my watch. It can connect to the network of the inner courtyard and check a lot of information that cannot be found in the outside world. Soon a profession other than pilot appeared in front of Garen. Energy mechanic, a powerful profession that uses various biochemical technologies and mechanical intelligence to manufacture guards, tools, experimental platforms, etc. A specialized category of consciousness is required. It requires a lot of professional knowledge and is divided into many genres. There are energy mechanics who study warfare, and there are scientific research type energy mechanics who study medicine. Energy Master, Garen suddenly remembered the bright light training method that he had seen before, which had little combat effectiveness. He saw it when he was trading with the Glory Nobles. Didn't you say that biochemical modulation technology has been eliminated for many years? How come there is a talent like a master of biochemical machinery appearing in the inner courtyard again? He was slightly curious and continued to inquire. Energy mechanics are different from modulators who used biochemical pools in ancient times. They mainly focus on mechanical intelligence, and biochemical technology is only a supplement. They have great advantages over modulators. The biggest point is that they can have their own scientific research. The platform can use the scientific research platform to synthesize many materials and components required for high-end mechas. It can perform all-round maintenance on high-end mechas such as accelerating repair and treatment, improving technology, and enhancing power. The number of capable mechanics in the Inner Academy is rare, and their actual combat abilities are often not high, but they have good relationships with many high-end pilots belongs to one of the rare talents. Garen read the information carefully and then flipped through other special and rare professions. He found that in addition to mechanics, there were energy mechanics and biochemists, two of the most complex professions. Energy mechanics already knew something about it? If so, the role of the energy mechanic for the pilot is mainly to focus on the maintenance and treatment of the mecha, while the role of the biochemist is to focus on the treatment and maintenance of the pilot himself. Biochemist, a special profession that uses pharmacy, biochemistry, and virology as tools. Many biochemists have advanced from the doctor's profession. They are mainly responsible for high-end treatment of injuries, congenital diseases, and difficult and complicated diseases, and dealing with various troublesome illnesses of senior pilots. The status is higher than that of the mechanic master, and the number is extremely rare. There are no other special and rare professions worth noting. Energy mechanics are responsible for the repair and maintenance of high-end mechas. In this way, ordinary maintenance factories cannot meet the needs of high-end mechas. In this way, an energy machinist must know the secrets of many high-end mechas. What a huge network of connections! Jia Long was secretly shocked. If you touch such a talented person, you will touch an entire interest group. I think biochemists should be similar. He was suddenly moved. With his attainments in biochemistry, becoming a biochemist should be much easier than for ordinary people. Including potential points may also help. Such two professions are more in line with his strategy of gathering potential power background and buying himself time to grow. However, both professions require special training of combat-free consciousness, which is a troublesome condition. Garen thought about the solution while walking towards Professor Fanduo's small villa. When he returned to the villa, he went directly to the Intelligence Center Hill and asked about the professor's whereabouts. It was almost time for lectures. After entering the inner courtyard for so many days, he almost forgot that Professor Fanduo would give lectures every 5 days. You ask about biochemists and energy mechanics? Every student will be interested in these two professions. Of course they all failed. Hill laughed mercilessly. Biochemists have no relevant training methods, and energy mechanics have. There are two of them, you can choose to buy both. Sitting down on the wooden sofa in the living room on the first floor, Garen slowly breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "What's the price?" "It's cheaper for you. Let's give it a round number, 200 mission points." Hill casually made a price. This guy is clearly targeting the 200 mission points that Galen just acquired. For every student who enters the villa, he can check how many mission points are on the opponent's inner court account. He is indeed a profiteer. Which ones are they? Garen didn't take it seriously. It's okay to grab some of the mission points and get them back when they're gone. He's never been a good person. You really want to buy it, but depending on your qualifications, you might really be able to join the profession of Mecha Master. Many talented pilots will choose to study the profession of Mecha Master concurrently. After all, who wants to learn the secrets of high-end mechas in the future? Everything is in the hands of others. Are you right? I have seen the masters in the inner courtyard, and many of them have the same temperament as you. Forget it, Hill, how many times have you told me this before? After deceiving so many people, you still want to deceive the new junior. A woman strode into the living room. This woman has broad bones and is much taller than the average person. She looks like a giantess, over 2 meters and 3 meters tall. He is dressed in bright red clothes and has long light yellow hair. Behind the woman were 2 young girls and boys who looked very tender at first sight. The 2 guys were not very old, probably only 18 or 19 years old. They actually had freshman marks on their clothes. These are the 2 junior brothers and sisters selected by the teacher this time, Maluo and Naihui. The woman introduced to Garen with a smile, I am your senior sister, Galifei. Don't worry about the gigantism you were born with. Garen stood up with a smile. I'm Nono Siwa, you can just call me Nono. As soon as he stood up, the faint scent of blood left after the killing immediately spread out, making the world's Galifei narrow his eyes slightly. This guy is not simple. Galifei originally thought that this junior also needed a good training before he dared to live a normal life in the inner courtyard, but he didn't expect that this guy himself didn't seem to be a good person. Maluo and Naihui, 2 freshmen, also looked at Garen with some recognition. Obviously, their status as newcomers naturally narrowed the distance between them. Maluo was the little boy. He was about to go over and have a good chat with Nyanyo, but he was slightly pulled back by his senior sister. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 878. Garen looked at these 2 people. It was obvious that they were newcomers who had never experienced any fighting or intrigue. They might not even have a good understanding of the environment and competition mechanism of Black Pen Academy itself. With a slight smile, Garen's gaze shifted to senior sister Galifei. Tomorrow should be the time for the teacher to give lectures. I wonder if the other 2 senior brothers will come. Maybe, but one of them went to the meteorite belt and it may take a long time to come back. Galifei answered casually and sat down with the 2 newcomers. Garen didn't take it seriously and sat down. Okay Hill, let's continue the transaction. No problem, Intelligence Center. Hill replied hurriedly. Soon a transparent light screen appeared in front of Garen, with countless numbers and lines flowing densely on it, and then it quickly stopped, displaying only 2 lines of words. The Energy Master training method you want is the latest training method that anyone can practice, but it may take a little longer. Hill laughed dryly. A little bit longer, Galifei, who was looking on coldly with his arms folded, interjected disdainfully, you're still called a little bit longer when you haven't even made 1% progress in a year. Obviously she meant to remind Garen that this was a pit and you couldn't get out if you jumped in it. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean others can't do it, Hill retorted. I think Nyanyo is obviously not an ordinary person. Maybe he really has the physique of an energy weapon master. Once he becomes an energy weapon master, it will be absolutely no problem to be popular and drink spicy food. Isn't this what you told me back then? That's because your qualifications are not good enough. Who can you blame? I kept reminding you all the time, but you. One person and one core quarreled with each other. Garen ignored the quarrel between the 2 and simply glanced at the introduction above. Energy Mechanic Training Method, NIS, the Orthodox sect NIS founded by Nair, the ancient master of the Republic of Elsie, has the most advanced level of energizers, and is second to none in terms of the combination of machinery and biochemistry. Mainly famous for manufacturing flying insect-like energy machines. Specialties of the exercise method, each level improves the basic defense of the energy equipment produced in the test platform by 0.5 and the speed by 0.5. Energy Master Training Method, LoRa Wireless Terminal Control, a cumulative exercise method created by the mysterious Energy Master LoRa. The biggest feature of the test platform is its cumulative nature. Every other year, a highly intelligent fighter will be naturally created. The number of energy weapons depends on the level of the platform. The energy machine will not bring any burden on the consciousness of the energy mechanic. It is an automatic intelligent control, but the disadvantage is that it will be affected by possible electromagnetic influence. If there are enough materials and energy, it is easy to create an army of mechanical weapons. Of course, the prerequisite is that there must be a large enough control platform. Training method specialty: each level increases the upper limit of the platform's energy equipment by 1, the initial upper limit of all energy equipment master's equipment is 1, and each level reduces the energy equipment manufacturing consumption by 5%. Note: the above exercise methods may consume more time and invest more resources. Looking at the training methods of these two energy weapon masters, Garen also roughly understood that the energy weapon master's main strength should come from energy weapons, and manufacturing energy weapons requires a lot of resources and energy. This is a profession that only rich people can afford, and even if they are rich, they will not have a good future in the future if they spend too much energy on the training of energy mechanics. Gallifrey was beside him. It seemed like he was saying it casually, but he was actually reminding Garen. Can masters of energy refine materials by themselves? Garen suddenly asked. Of course, Hale quickly replied, any energy mechanic can purify or synthesize materials such as metals. Of course, an energy furnace is needed. Then I want NIS. Garen still chose this as a try. He has not forgotten that he once had a similar training method, brilliant light, from the Glory Nobles. That exercise method is very weird. It only emphasizes that it is specially designed for the biochemical modulation pool. No problem. Hilton was overjoyed and smiled. Hearing a ding, all the mission points on Galleon's account were directly deducted. The NIS exercise method has also been included in his watch database. He lowered his head and began to look through it slowly. For a while, the sofa became silent. The other three Gallifrey also saw what was going on. They had nothing to say and started chatting quietly, keeping their voices very low. Garen quickly glanced at the overall NIS exercise method and found that it was not very similar to the brilliant light exercise method, but they both had something in common, that is, they both mentioned a very important thing, the biochemical modulation pool. The mainstream of energy weapon masters is mainly focused on manufacturing various energy weapons that are semi-controlled by consciousness, auxiliary combat, logistics, etc., all of which can play a big role. Many of these creative technologies can even revolutionize the technology of the entire industry. Are top-level scientific research talents. Of course, there is also a lot of basic learning knowledge required. Not to mention various basic subjects, there are more than 20 subjects, and then there are advanced subjects such as high-energy mathematics, magnetization force field research, energy-saving magnetic materials, nanoelectronics, etc., nanobiotechnology, the basis of cyclic fusion energy, and a lot of other research sciences. Even if there are exercises to improve brain intelligence, many things have simply reached the level of pure fantasy. They are to build models from physical reality, calculate and find regular formulas, and then use these formulas to deduce new formulas, and then use this thing to calculate various new physical phenomena and derive new physical models. On this basis, quantum computers are used to accumulate phenomena or evolve phenomena to form the final desired primary state. This is a process to achieve the primary goal state, which also involves a lot of basic constants, basic calculations, a lot of complicated work, and a quantum computer with sufficient performance is required, otherwise the calculations and deductions will not be possible. None of the qualifications. A primary state may only be the most common application environment parameter on many mechanic platforms, and thousands of countless parameters are often required on the platform. After understanding this, Garen finally understood why there were so few skilled mechanics. The complexity involved in relationships was far beyond the imagination of those pilots who relied on talent to make a living. But one good thing about Ninmei Master is that anyone can learn its training methods. the official will never restrict the content in this area. There is no need to have any identity or other qualifications to learn, but even so, without a lot of knowledge accumulation, a large amount of resources are accumulated, and a large amount of wealth is used as a reserve, and it is impossible to develop even a hair of an energy mechanic. It's really a money-burning industry. Galen sighed. If you have a lot of money, you don't have to worry about anything. Of course, there are too many people with a lot of money, but the possibility of becoming a magician is only 1 in 10,000. Galuf picked up the coffee sent by the intelligence center and drank it. Mouth. Garin nodded silently, sorted out the information, and went back to the room. He had no intention of communicating with the other two newcomers at all. Malugo stood up and wanted to call him to stop, but was pulled by Jalafei and shook his head slightly. He could only watch Qiulong walking into his room. After the door slammed shut, it made a beeping sound when it was locked. "Senior sister, why don't you let me and him?" Malugo sat down in confusion and looked at Galafei. He knew that the other person was very good at heart and did not seem like the kind of person who deliberately caused harm. Ni Hui on the side also looked over with confusion. Obviously she also had this doubt in her mind. Garafai put down his coffee. "That guy is not an ordinary person, he has killed people." Ah! Malugo and Ni Hui were both frightened by the two exclamations. They were just freshmen who had just entered the college. They were chosen to be brought to Professor Fanduo because of a special relationship. They relied not on their grades but on their relationships. "Don't mess with him," Galafei said sternly. "There is a kind of person who can talk to anyone in a gentle manner on the surface, and seems to have a good temper, but when he turns against you, he can eat you up in an instant without even losing your bones." Vomit. "That person is also a new student, right?" Malugo asked with a pale face. "Killing someone? Not to mention killing people, he had never used a knife to kill chickens. He was frightened when he saw others fighting. Ni Hui next to him did the same thing, holding Malugo's arm tightly. "There are also big differences between freshmen." Galafei shook his head. "Anyway, just don't provoke him." Time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, Garin stayed with teacher Fanduo for 8 or 9 days. It's time to make an appointment with Enda soon. Every day he just stayed in the villa, studying new exercise methods, and accumulating enough potential points for backup. Galafei and another senior brother have arrived. As expected, both of them have 5th level consciousness and a new moon level resonance. They have their own mechas. They even have space buttons. Planting something that can instantly load the mecha into and out of space items opened Garen's eyes. This was the first time he saw the real space storage technology that only appeared in novels before. Then came teacher Fanduo's lecture. There was no intention of waiting for Garin and the two newcomers to make progress. Fanduo chatted non-stop for an hour. There were a large number of parameters and conventional formulas that needed to be memorized. Many formulas further calculated more complex formulas. Stacked over and over, a complex consciousness resonance technique Xiaoying combined with hundreds of lines of various complex theoretical laws and numbers was finally formed. This is the true resonance skill that Fandu summarized with the eagle claw. He continuously deduced the eagle claw, which was only level 5. Finally, after many years of calculations, he finally got this resonance skill Sand Eagle that can increase the resonance level. This resonance skill is rather strange, at least it looks strange in Galleons, because as long as you continue to practice it, you can slowly improve the resonance of Painting's claws and the mecha. This resonance skill is not used for fighting at all, but used for cultivation. Moreover, it cannot be replaced by a computer. Every time, calculations must be started from scratch and simulated in the brain. Consciousness will produce different calculation fluctuations in such calculation simulations, which will also affect the core of the mecha. The specific principle involves the resonance theory. The resonance theory of this world far exceeds the foundation that Galen himself researched and explored in the totem world, and has developed to a very high level. During these days in the villa, Garen continued to deeply absorb these high-end knowledge systems. With his broadcast knowledge system that brought together several worlds, it was extremely difficult to deal with these things. He only deduced Xiaoying to 60% alone. It got stuck left and right. The previous technologies were all ones he could describe as breakthroughs, but the later ones involved higher level calculations, which made his head hurt. But it's still not very clear. Many times I feel dizzy walking around. During this time, the two newcomers Maluo and Naihui finally realized the cruelty of the inner courtyard. After going out for a few days, I would come back with a bruised nose and face, a lot of bruises on my body, and sometimes even my legs would be limping. Galifei did not interfere. After all, the two of them would have to stand up and become independent in the inner courtyard sooner or later. If she interfered in everything, it would be very detrimental to their growth. And the most important thing is that in the inner courtyard, old people like them are not invincible. Professor Fan Duo has old students, and other instructors also have old students. Everyone has their own troubles and opponents. The two children seemed to have some backbone and stubbornness, persisting on their own. Every time they came back, they didn't ask for help from their senior sisters and brothers and just suffered on their own. Fortunately, although they came back with injuries every day, they recovered well every time. The treatment conditions in the villa were still very good, and it didn't take long to deal with these injuries. And the people who bully them seem to have different degrees of severity. They are not too serious and will cause sequelae. They know that they will have little income if they catch all the money. Click. Maluo, who was sitting in the living room while Naihui was bandaging his calf, turned his head and saw that the door of Nanosawa's room, which he had not left for several days, was opened. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 879. Garen walked out of the door and saw that Milo Naihui was covered in injuries again. He had no expression. He just calmly went to the intelligence center hill and asked about something, then walked out of the living room door and walked towards the door. Be careful. There are people guarding outside. Maluo saw the unsuspecting Garen walking out and shouted to him kindly. There are a lot of people outside guarding us when we go out. His face turned red, and he was embarrassed to say that he had provoked those people here. Seeing that they were easy to bully and rob, they gradually attracted more and more people, and everyone wanted to come and get a piece of the pie. Nonosiwa was also a newcomer, and Maluo felt very guilty if he was also robbed because of his own affairs. I'm different from you. Garen waved his hand without looking back. He strode out of the door, and as soon as he stepped out, his footsteps landed on the street. A group of vicious-looking bad students gathered around the villa on both sides. Each of these students has completely lost the elite temperament they had when they were selected to enter the inner academy. They have been completely changed by the cruel competition system of the inner academy. You guys are in the way. Garen turned his eyes and roughly estimated the levels of the people here. There were 15 in total, both men and women, but the most severe fluctuation was only level 3. Boy, what are you talking about? We all remember the old students in this villa, but you still want to scare us by pretending to be an old man? Save yourself, a fat woman with scars on her face sneered. Hand over the mission points and general points. Don't make us use our fists. A group of people sneered. Maluo in the living room saw the scene and became anxious. He wanted to rush out to save people, but was suddenly held back by a big hand. When I looked back, I saw that it was Sister Galifei. Sister, you. Don't make any noise. That freshman is not a rookie like you. Galifei stared at Garen's back outside with a solemn expression. Look carefully, you are both newcomers, how big the gap is between you. If you want revenge, you still have a long way to go. Maluo was stunned. Boom. At this moment, a violent storm suddenly rolled up outside the villa. When he turned around and looked again, only Nono was left holding a man's head with one hand, letting him hang in the air and beating his arm. Bang! The man was thrown out by Nono and hit hard against a hover car that happened to be passing by. The hit made the hover car swerve hard and almost caused a car accident. However, the owner of the car didn't even dare to fart. He turned a corner and sped up quickly. The man rolled down and lay on his back, surrounded by passing vehicles, and appeared to have passed out. Most of the people who had surrounded Nono earlier were seriously injured and unconscious. Some had broken arms, some had collapsed sternums, and some had their thighs twisted into knots. But most of them had bleeding from their nostrils and mouths. At first glance, they looked like they had been beaten. The powerful consciousness was directly shocked and seriously injured. All of them were seriously injured in consciousness, and the techniques were very precise. No one died. If you don't train for 10 days and a half, you can't even get out of bed. Tisk tisk. It's really cruel, Gallifrey sighed. So strong. Malugo opened his mouth wide. It's amazing, and Hui grabbed Malugo's arm so tightly that even his nails were about to sink in, but neither of them noticed. That guy actually cleared up some trouble for you. Gallif shook his head and said, originally, I planned to let you exercise more. Malugo lowered his head in shame. He originally thought that the senior sister didn't care about them at all. Why, he is also a newcomer, why is he so much better than us? Yes, we are also new. Why? Think about it carefully. Gallif turned around and went back to his room. Only Malugo and Naihui were left with some insights. When he looked up again, Nono Siwa outside the door had disappeared. Inner court number 1, big library. The bustling crowds of people are constantly going up and down the hundreds of stone steps in the library. Everyone unconsciously keeps a safe distance from others. It seems that the steps are still very wide, but the people behind are willing to wait for others. Go up and down first, not wanting to get too close. There are a pair of symmetrical black statues at regular intervals on both sides of the steps. Garen wore a black trench coat that he just bought, covering his entire body. He was standing behind a statue of a woman holding a harp and singing with her head down. This outfit cost him all the remaining general points, and everything on his account was spent on this outfit. It looks like just a suit of ordinary clothes, but it is actually a powerful personal armor material with secondary defense. The most important function is to isolate all careful wave detection and detection below the inheritance level, so that others can't figure out your own consciousness level. Even if it is a heritage level, the clerk's sworn guarantee can still have a certain concealment effect. However, according to Garen's own use of instrument detection and calculation, when dealing with heritage level consciousness, the most conservative estimate is that if the other party scans a large area, it may be a bit the function of masking is good, but if you pay a little attention, it will be useless. But after suffering such a big loss, he still felt unhappy if he didn't test it out before leaving. Pilots are different from secret warriors. Once they are unable to react, they are just ordinary people who are a little stronger than ordinary people. When Garen came here, he also got information from Anda about Phyla's recent work and rest schedule. It cost about 20,000 universal points, which is not cheap. Library number 1 is a key database for storing orbital particle data in the inner courtyard. You cannot borrow and leave. Only when you enter the library can you use a wireless connection to enter the database and read the data. When you leave the library, all the data will be automatically deleted. There is a lot of management supervision that does not allow for transcribing. Philadelphia has been searching for information on orbital particles recently and comes here every day. Garen leaned quietly behind the statue. There were many people like him, and it seemed that he was just one of the many students seeking revenge. It's inconspicuous. Scenes like this are everywhere in the inner courtyard, and people squatting and seeking revenge happen every day. Beside him, there were two young boys and girls smoking cigarettes. The girl had colorful hair, but she had a good figure and face. She glanced at Galen here. "Hey buddy, are you here to find someone too?" She came over and looked casual. "Yeah, you too." Garen smiled, showing a very gentle look. "My sister was beaten. This time I found the guy who beat me, and I came here to guard her." The girl took a puff of cigarette and said casually, "Does the fire snake know? It's that kid who dares to touch my sister." She glanced at Garen's expression from the corner of her eyes, trying to see that the other person was surprised. However, Garen still smiled plainly, as if he didn't know Fire Snake at all. "You don't know Fire Snake?" The boy next to him couldn't help but ask. Forget it, forget it. He's coming soon, chat with him about something and concentrate. Crew and his people are also here." Soon two more men came over and talked quietly with the boy, seeming to be discussing something. Several people took out ray guns with a click in their hands, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. The lethality of the ray gun is around level 1, and it is no problem to deal with ordinary first-level armor and third-level consciousness students. Garen took 2 steps back and gave the group of people enough space. He watched from the side as they prepared weapons, including sharp daggers, firearms, and even a second-level powerful individual laser cannon. This group of people seems to be serious about it. Taking out these weapons, it is no problem to deal with guys with level 4 consciousness. The individual laser cannon can completely penetrate the consciousness force field formed by level 4 consciousness. The consciousness force field can be activated individually at level 4, but if you want to be able to emit it while driving a mecha, you need to reach level 5. Garen shook his head slightly. This time he was well prepared. In order to deal with Fila's possible methods, he spent millions or even tens of millions of general points, and also robbed more than 10 fat sheep. "I bought some good equipment at the mission point." Looking at the unabashed appearance of these people, it was obvious that they had no intention of keeping it secret. The other party probably also knew that they would be squatting outside. At this moment, a slender and capable figure finally walked out of the door of library number 1. Philadelphia was dressed in black tight-fitting clothes, with a short cloak still hanging on his back. What was strange was that he actually had 4 eyebrows. In addition to the 2 eyebrows of ordinary people, he also had a pair of long red eyebrows. Behind him were 3 people who seemed to be bodyguards, each of them showing fluctuations in their consciousness field. The group of people walked out of the library, and the passers-by around them all gave way, not daring to get too close to the group of people. "It's Philadelphia. Fila, who is ranked among the top 5, tisk tisk, I heard that he was challenged by Leela, who is ranked 9th today, and he should be going to the arena now," a group of squatters beside Garen discussed in a low voice. Some time ago, Blanding personally entered the inner courtyard and talked with Fela for more than 10 minutes. I wonder if it will have any impact on the North District. Who knows? It would be weird if we could just guess what top bosses like them are discussing. A group of people were discussing quietly. The girl with colorful hair let out a breath and listened to the useless chatter of a group of people. She was too lazy to say anything more and turned around to look to the side in boredom. Garan is assembling a single soldier combined missile silo. The 6-meter-high missile silo is almost assembled by this guy. And the direction of alignment. The girl looked back and suddenly felt her heartbeat slow down by half a beat. They were actually facing Fila and his party. You, she pointed at Garen and couldn't even speak clearly for a while. In the blink of an eye, he saw something shaking out from under Garen's clothes. High explosives, high-energy radiation cannons, disposable biochemical acid bombs, and at least a level 5 orbital force field generator worth tens of millions. All kinds of terrifying large-area weapons with lethality at the 4th level were taken out one by one. The other people here were immediately attracted by what Garen took out, and they were all frightened. There are tens of millions of general points and hundreds of mission points for these things, so don't even think about getting them. Use tens of millions of general points to hit people. If these things were left outside, they could destroy most of the city. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 880. The green-haired girl couldn't close her mouth, with a frightened expression on her face. Various weapons of mass destruction and powerful bombs that are only used against air battleships, this guy actually took out so many at once. Naturally, such a big move could not be concealed at all. As soon as Garen screamed, Phyla looked over. At the first glance, the two people's eyes immediately intersected. With a muffled roar, the 6-meter-long launch silo suddenly ejected a white stream of light, drawing a perfect arc line and accurately aiming at Phyla below. The two of them were hundreds of meters apart, and the stone steps of the library were very wide, more than 200 meters wide. At this time, it was too late to escape, and Phyla's pupils shrank instantly. Spread. He only had time to yell. The expressions of the people behind them changed, and they suddenly jumped in all directions, but they were still a step too late. A ball of extremely white light exploded, covering the entire 100-meter range on the steps, and many innocent students were also implicated. The Aurora missile, which is more than 5 meters high, can destroy the consciousness force field at the 5th level more than 10 times with its burst of heat in an instant. However, if there are too many force fields at the 5th level, the power of the missile will also be shared. A violent burst of light and heat exploded. Phyla only felt hot, and her clothes were burned and scorched immediately. Her whole body seemed to be pale in all directions, and she could not see anything. The consciousness force field she released coiled into a giant snake. The same form, but still shaken by the huge explosion, a mouthful of blood spurted out. "You wanna die?" He roared wildly, feeling that he had suffered such a big loss for the first time in his life, and rushed towards Garen not far away while carrying the Aurora missile force field. However, he saw Garen just releasing several self-tracking radiation bombs flying towards him. The bombs were like small fish released, surrounding them in arcs from all directions. "I wish you good luck." Garen stretched out his hand and waved it gently on his forehead, then turned and left with a smile. The blazing light and heat erupted violently again. In an instant, there seemed to be countless birds screaming at the same time. Garen used an automatic tracking device to release a large number of bombs and terrorist weapons, which hit the target at the same time. The target was Phyla's body. The explosion shook the air and blood, and at the moment when the consciousness force field was not completely stable, at this moment, the pilot's consciousness was out of control and could not be fully controlled. A thick cloud of black smoke erupted behind him, and the city was filled with piercing sirens. Garen made a few leaps and quickly landed on top of a speeding hover car. He stood up in a half-crouch and looked back at the scene he had created. At the entrance of the entire library, a column of smoke continued to rise into the sky, which was also mixed with Phyla's unwilling roar, but she was entangled by the force field generator and could not walk away. Sure enough, the force field generator that I spent a lot of money to buy to fix the battleship is different. The effect is so powerful. Garen touched his chin and sighed, now with these clothes, even the money stolen and this month's all the income is gone. He looked at his watch and saw 331 universal points left. This is the power of wealth. But I have to prevent others from doing this to me. Although he said this, Garen knew that no one else could have the actuarial power he had to calculate how much damage the residual destructive power would cause after these weapons exploded and were neutralized by Phyla. The scene created by Garen looks terrifying. The 5th level force field without resonance will kill those at the crescent level if it touches it. However, after Phyla resisted with all his strength, the remaining lethality was actually not as much as imagined. It's terrifying. It can only severely injure an ordinary student at level 3 or level 2. It doesn't violate the rule of not killing people under surveillance at all. Garen used more than a dozen small restraint field tools to lock all the power within a certain range at the same time. At the moment of the explosion, these restraint field tools exploded at the same time and were used as one-time props to offset part of the power of the explosion. And at the same time, the irrelevant crowd was directly exploded and blown away. This was the real reason why other students were prevented from dying. Explosion range, possible explosion points around the lethality parameters, Phyla's possible responses, and the timing of using the force field generator to prevent Phyla from running around and tracking the explosion and affecting other people. For all this, Galen has designed multiple simulation environments and used computer modeling hundreds of times to come up with a perfect action plan. This is the terrible thing about high-intelligence crimes. Looking at his hands, Garen himself felt terrible. I don't know how that guy Phyla is doing. It should be expected that he is either seriously injured or disabled. I have overflowed part of his force field power. With a slight smile, Garen looked towards the direction of the library, where there was only a small square that keeps shrinking. Ah! Bang! A statue was severely broken by Phyla and flew dozens of meters away. Thick black pythons were coiled around him, like an ancient god, except that his body was in tatters, green and black, and most of his hair was burned off, like a hairless rooster. The terrifying power that originally appeared was completely lost due to this funny image. He smashed the statue next to him in a venting manner, and wisps of black smoke erupted from his body. Instead, they are more like refugees fleeing from somewhere. Several subordinates around him were also seriously injured, but they were obviously much better than him. This explosion attack was obviously targeted at him alone. All the lethality was squeezed into a small range by the force field restraint. 80% of it was borne by him alone. This kind of terrifying calculation and accuracy made Phyla feel a little nervous at this moment. The most important thing is that the other party's use of such violent methods has not yet triggered the participation of the automatic management mechanism of the City Management Bureau. Obviously, such methods have not affected the life of an ordinary student. At most, they will only cause serious damage, and serious damage in this era, as long as you have enough money, your limbs can be repaired or replaced. This is the scariest thing. After Phyla vented his anger, his heart gradually returned to its original calmness. The colorless silver-patterned inner armor that slowly lit up on his body continued to flow. This was also the fundamental reason why he was not seriously injured by the attack just now. Such high-tech inner armor offset most of the lethality, but it almost looked like it was scrapped. It's accurate to this point. It seems that the person who did it is not an ordinary person. Phyla took off her tattered top and inner armor and glanced at the students watching the excitement. The people around them suddenly felt like falling into an ice cave and hurriedly retreated. They were originally watching the excitement. There were not many people there, and they were all afraid that they would be involved. When he was so frightened, the animals dispersed, and no one was seen in a few seconds. The three men around him groaned and got up from the ground. One of them had his arm broken by the explosion, and the other had half of his body almost burned. The last person's ears were blown away. Seeing the miserable situation of his men, Phyla was filled with anger. He was suddenly attacked, and even his own men were also injured in such a tragic situation. Check. Check for me. Find out that guy's identity, backstage, everything, he roared, uncontrollably manic. The sky-shaking roars continued to echo, and Phyla's terrifying consciousness force field continued to fluctuate like a fast river. Most people may not be able to see it, but experts at the same level can see that he is seriously injured. Tens of millions of general points exploded and burned at the same time, which could destroy most of the city in the outside world. At this time, they were all gathered together at one point, allowing him to bear them all. Even if this guy also had countless life-saving items, the force field was powerful and terrifying. Enough to fight against the red and white glorious mecha pilots, but at this time, he was also blinded by the attack made of money. Tisk, 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 it's really embarrassing. At the bottom of the steps, a tall man in a green windbreaker led a team of people out of the car and walked up the stone steps. The leading man seemed to be a natural leader, with a sense of peace and oppressive heaviness on his body. His delicate facial features and skin make people wonder whether he has had plastic surgery. The rankings change every day. It seems that I, Leela, am going to get a bargain today. The man in green windbreaker snapped his fingers seemingly frivolously, and suddenly there were crowds of people surrounding him, including third-level and fourth-level students. Slowly walking out of the hiding place, there were 20 or 30 people, all wearing green badges. They were obviously subordinates of the man in green windbreaker. Leela, do you think you can beat me if I'm injured? Fila said in a deep voice, her bronzed upper body naked, staring directly at the man below. When you, the frivolous man shook his head slightly, I work so hard to find so many people here, not to win you, but to kill you. Before he finished speaking, the bodies of all the surrounding green badge students lit up with green light at the same time, and a huge green net formed with a bang, instantly wrapping Phyla and others in it at the speed of light. This is Dimensional Ion Defense Field. Phyla's expression finally changed. Yes, that's it. It's a piece of wreckage that I acquired 65 years ago. I spent a lot of money to perfect it. Don't let me down, Leela chuckled, but her eyes flashed like a fox. The consciousnesses of more than 30 people gathered together at the same time, forming a huge torrent force field that suppressed the 4 Phyla people inside. Breakthrough. With a violent roar, Phyla no longer held back, and her whole body's consciousness resonated, like a black light vibrating with rhythm, spreading out in circles with powerful waves, cancelling out the suppression of the force field from around her. His whole body was like an arrow leaving the string, and the explosion under his feet produced a huge driving force, rushing towards the direction of Leela ahead. So spectacular looking. At the green light shield propped up in the distance, Garen gently jumped down from the top of the speeding suspended car, twisted his feet, directly offset the inertial momentum, and landed lightly on an overpass above the road. Superior. In the direction of Library Number 1, plumes of green smoke were rising, and a huge bowl-shaped green light shield was clearly visible, but the strange thing was that there were no vehicles from the administration heading that way, and apparently the guy who took action later was also with a background like Tong Tien. Under such circumstances, the administration can only choose to turn a blind eye and simply not help each other. I asked why my weapons and bombs were sold to me so easily. Now it seems that someone really planned it. This guy had a very deep plan and wanted to trap me. Fortunately, I pulled away in time. Garen inserted his hands. He fumbled in his trouser pocket, pulled out a pair of sunglasses and put them on. The moment he put on the sunglasses, his entire face and body shape began to change slightly, and his outlines became blurry. Although the strong muscle outlines on his body are still there, he looks completely different from the image just now. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 881. But so many lethal weapons can't kill him. Garen frowned slightly. The strength of the 5th level and Half Moon Master exceeded his expectations. He was actually able to increase the force field to such an extent. This kind of defensive force field, already comparable to an ordinary level 5 mecha, right? Although the weapons he used in one go dispersed their power, they should not be something that humans can resist with their physical bodies. It seems likely that it has life-saving protection on its body, like a goldfish. He was not afraid that the other party would come to his door. Phyla had already started to kill him like this, and the two sides had already formed a deadly feud. Moreover, as a secret warrior, his alertness is at its peak at all times and he is not afraid of sneak attacks by others. He is much stronger in this regard than a pilot. As for relatives and the like being affected, there may be no one in the outer courtyard to care about this kind of thing, but in the inner courtyard, especially in conflicts between masters, no one will do such stupid things. The masters are not level 4. The resonance level is level 5, or there is resonance level. If a master of this level is forced to become anxious and lurks to become an assassin, no ordinary guard outside can stop him. You must know that in the outside world, level 3 or 4 can be easily reached. Pilots with super consciousness can live a very good life. The cost of hiring them is not expensive, and they also need to be qualified and willing to do so. Once the rules are broken, masters with level 5 consciousness or resonance will lurk and become killers or terrorists. The lethality of such people can be seen from the previous red and white radiance mecha. Only a few people can destroy an entire building. Big city. This is still caused by frontal confrontation, if it comes secretly. Therefore, the main target of the master's confrontation is to focus on the opponent. Only pilots who really have no scruples would use the method of mutual destruction. Putting aside these, Garen recalled the force field that Fira had exploded in just a moment. The power of the force field that exploded in that moment was definitely his true level, and compared it with the gap in his own force field. He stretched out his hand, and an invisible soft force field slowly covered the back of his hand, like running water, and seemed to have no great defensive power. The exercise method given by Chiyu has strong recovery power, but it has no defensive power at all. It should be part of some combination of exercise methods, he guessed. There must be another part of the exercise method that specializes in defense against attacks. The more he practiced these days, the more he felt the divided texture of this exercise method. Looking up at the vibrating green light and black light in the direction of the library, it was obvious that the guy who came after him had already fought with Phyla. Would you like to go take a look? Garen touched his chin. The vibration became stronger and stronger. Suddenly, the black color surged and suddenly took over. This made Garen's eyes narrow slightly. It seems that another trump card has been revealed. As expected of a giant who has lived for so many years, he has so many cards to use compared to his real age. Phyla's age is probably 3 points, if not half, of his. One of them. Garen calculated carefully. Although he couldn't remember exactly how long he lived, he estimated that he might be 400 to 500 years old. Putting together several worlds, so much time has passed without realizing it. Philadelphia's information does not specifically indicate his age, but it can be estimated roughly that it should be 200 years old. He looks young on the outside, but he is actually an old man. Technological means and the longevity increase of resonance are enough for a person, a powerful and wealthy guy, to easily live to be 200 years old. Seeing that Phyla had regained the upper hand, Garen gave up the idea of looking back to watch the battle and slowly walked off the bridge. Several guys from the administration had already rushed in front of him, holding high-energy ray guns. This is the area. Why is it missing? According to the route of that car, it should be here. It might be around. Look for it. One of them grabbed Garen's clothes. Hey! Did you see this person passing by here? He directly turned up his watch, called up an image of a familiar face, and growled at Garen. Garen looked at it and saw that it was the face he had disguised just now. He shook his head. No, I just saw a black shadow flash and then disappear. Officer, is this person a wanted criminal? He looked calm and fearless, but also a little curious. This kind of expression is the most common in the inner courtyard, and some capable elites always have this kind of expression. Seeing that Garen responded calmly, the man also relaxed a little. Apparently he was afraid of offending someone inexplicably and shook his head. It's not that he's a wanted criminal, he just offended someone he shouldn't have. It's bad luck for this guy. Okay, thank you, man. He put away his watch and walked away. He and a few others quickly found a direction and ran over, quickly disappearing at the end of the overpass. Jia Long watched several people leave quietly, and Shi Shiren walked off the bridge from the other end. Slowly walked towards Professor Fanduo's villa. In front of the library, Fella bent over, supporting his knees with both hands, sweat and blood mixed with blood flowing down his hair, slowly dripping from his chin and falling to the ground. His originally young skin was slowly getting wrinkled and becoming sagging like aging. It consumes too much consciousness. He touched his facial skin. It's been a long time since I fought to this level. All his men were unconscious, and a large number of people were lying densely around them, all men brought by Leela. Most of them were seriously injured, and no one was killed. After all, even with their status, it would be a big trouble to kill elite students in public, so the two of them also restrained their scope of influence. Leela was half kneeling on the steps not far away. There were blood holes on her body that were as thick as 3 fingers, and the edges of the wounds were scorched black. You are worthy of being Fila to still be so strong despite being injured. He managed to stand up. No wonder I have been suppressed by you for so many years. It turns out you. A black line suddenly flashed and hit Leela hard, knocking him away completely with a bang. He flew to the center of a building opposite the library behind him, directly broke the glass, and shot into someone else's house. Let's go, Phyla yelled, and several black shadows appeared beside him out of thin air. At the same time, he put the unconscious man on his shoulders and helped him quickly walk to the hover car not far away. The green light mask above the head was also removed at this time. Philadelphia resisted the feeling of fainting. I got on the hover car with support, and finally relaxed when I saw the white-haired old man driving the car. Go back to your place. Quickly go. Layla's blow from the adults is only temporary. The old man looked serious. He had already seen the direction of Leela, who was knocked away. A green translucent tentacle suddenly popped out, like some kind of ocean tentacle monster. A huge green octopus with a diameter of 4 to 5 meters waving several tentacles got out of the hole in the floor. In the center of the meaty mouth part, Leela was lying in it with her arms spread wide. Her hair was flying, her face was covered with blood, and her lower body was completely integrated into the octopus. Among. Philadelphia. I want you to die. Resonance skills. It's really scary. The old man looked at Layla's form in shock, then looked back at the unconscious Phyla, and continued to accelerate. Originally, my lord should not have lost to him. If it weren't for that killer's professional methods, unlike ordinary novices, he was definitely a veteran among veterans, and the people in the administration would have found nothing. For the high-level decisive battle between Leela and the two, the administration was powerless. Behind both sides were huge power networks, which offset each other. In this situation, the competition was based on their individual strength. The old man kept driving, accelerating wildly, until Layla's octopus form was no longer visible behind him, and then slowly slowed down. The resonance skill form can't be very fast, and he doesn't dare to chase without the help of the mecha. Fortunately, it's okay. He let out a long breath. Uncle, have you escaped? Fella's weak voice came from behind. Reluctantly, we have to deal with the opponent's subsequent arrangements immediately. Layla's deep-sea organization will never let us leave so easily. He has arranged a lot of means for this duel. The old man nodded. It's so careless. I didn't expect that killer at the beginning had such strong simulated actuarial power, dared to use so many weapons of large-scale destruction, and surprisingly didn't kill any elite students. Phyla rubbed half of her body. Blood and tears slowly flowed from his head and eyes. This was the sequelae of excessive use of his consciousness and the explosion of his resonance skills. If the first wave of attacks hadn't consumed at least 1/3 of your consciousness, you wouldn't have been beaten like this by Leela later. The old man nodded. What did the boss say? Fella closed her eyes, found a tissue in the car and wiped the blood and tears. Let you go to the outer courtyard to take shelter first. or perform a simple task and go out for a walk. The deep sea is torn apart, and it will not give up, the old man replied. What's the attitude of Black Rose? Philo breathed out, picked up a bottle of water that automatically appeared in front of him, took a sip, rinsed his mouth, and spat into the retractable trash can in front of him. Like the Millennium Tree, we remain neutral. We are all foreign organizations, and there is no reason for them to care about the fighting between us, the old man replied. A bunch of bitches, Fella punched the leather of the seat hard. When the boss completes his plan, we will kill them all sooner or later. My lord, aren't you already connected to Blue Narcissus? Those vampires only think about money, money, money all day long. The details haven't been fully settled yet, they are just going crazy thinking about money, Fella said angrily. The cost of getting closer to the goal is too great, and their appetite is too great. Remember the consciousness of the killer who attacked you. This kind of highly intelligent killer must be dealt with as soon as possible, otherwise it will be very troublesome later, the old man said in a low voice. I remember, but although that person doesn't seem to have resonance, his combat awareness is very sophisticated. What about the level of consciousness? It should be around level 4 or 5. Do you want me to inform the 3 adults? The old man glanced at Philo from the rearview mirror. Since he's a killer, let's hire their old rival to kill him. We'll spend a reward of 100 million. It's best to kill him alive and half of his dead ones. Hang him on the heart-killing network. Philo gritted her teeth. Heart-killing network? The killers above are only at the 5th level of consciousness. Can they do it? It's okay. The low price of the soul-killing network is too high. We still have funds to negotiate with those vampires from Blue Narcissus, so we shouldn't use too much. The heart-killing network is enough. Besides, if they can't do it alone, won't they work together? Okay, I'll hang it up when I get back. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 882. Punch-Out. Garen quietly felt the flow, changes, and patterns of the airflow brought out by his fists. He closed his fist again and made a sharp slash with his hand. He is studying mecha combat skills, the special skills from the Painting Talon course, the Eagle style and other consciousness fighting skills learned in the Outer Academy. Compared with the Inner Academy, they are really not on the stage, so Professor Fan Duo specially taught them. A powerful skill that explodes the consciousness of the eagle's claws in a short time, Black Wind. This move was obtained by Fan Duo after decades of study. It is a powerful move that develops the consciousness of Painting's claws to the greatest extent. It can explode the power of the 2 arms with the most powerful consciousness in an instant. The principle is very complicated and requires sensory recognition. The most subtle vibration patterns, changing frequencies, trigger a sophisticated chain reaction. Garen punched again, and it exploded in the air like a firecracker. Mecha combat skills are divided into 4 parts: footwork techniques, killing techniques, and resonance techniques. Footwork can affect the dodge speed, etc. Techniques are regular combat modes, and resonance techniques are special combat moves. This is the strongest of the pilot's wear. It's a pity that if you don't have your own mecha, you can't have resonance skills. Without resonance skills, you can't beat Philo. Garen knew that the feud between him and Philo was deep. If he didn't take action, he would do it himself. It would be a matter of time. The main problem now is to build your own personal mecha, so the ability of the mechanist is very important. You can refine the materials yourself and have the equivalent of a small concentration processing plant. Garen demonstrated the mecha fighting skills hand by hand. The depth and precision of Hefeng were far beyond his imagination. Every move must be accurate to a certain extent, otherwise a careless or subtle error will lead to a chain of errors. Ultimately unformed. The power and specialness of this killing technique also gave him great inspiration, and he was now integrating it into his own fighting martial arts philosophy. The mission agreed with Enda is to obtain lambda alloy. This material is used to make the main body of the mecha. The index is relatively excellent in all aspects, considered to be above average, and then it is the engine technology, the power skeleton system, and the connection with consciousness. System. Mainly materials and engines, other things can be bought with money. Garen had made up his mind that the most important things in making his own mecha were materials and engine technology. Let's build the main body of the shelf first. These precious materials are not allowed to be sold on the market. As a material for manufacturing mid to high-end mechas, metal like lambda is also a scarce resource and cannot be purchased at all. Everyone will keep it in their own hands. If you want to buy it, you need to calculate the universal points in billions. He was gesturing at Blackwind's subtle manipulations, and Garen was constantly thinking about the next arrangement. Now he wants to upgrade the secret martial arts of life, but the red malachite he needs has not arrived yet, so he can only start working on his own mecha. For the time being, he only uses potential points as a mechanist. After a little bit, he has just started. Not even the first level of consciousness, the training method of the mechanic master seems to be of a very high level. Without wanting to waste the potential points, Garen plans to see if the improvement of the secret martial arts of life can also improve this consciousness training. Law. If we can do it together, we will save a lot. The secret weapon of life is improved, the main consciousness power is Eagle Talon and the nameless consciousness is improved, the secondary consciousness power is the weapon master's consciousness, and the three are simultaneously improved. It is very cost-effective. As for the extra potential points, he plans to use them all to improve the physical fitness and other professional knowledge systems of various courses required for point energy mechanics. Blackwind. Suddenly Garen let out a low roar, his arms vibrated, and a black air flow that seemed to be visible in the air flew out in all directions. The black air dissipated after flying less than 1 meter away. But Garen didn't control himself and almost touched himself. He quickly turned sideways to get out of the way of the black wind, but his clothes were inevitably touched. The black training clothes he originally put on were instantly annihilated into powder and scattered on the ground. Together with a metal button, it also turned into powder. Amazing, Garen narrowed his eyes, what kind of energy is this? It can destroy even metal alloys so easily. Although he performed the trick through the steps given by teacher Fanduo, he did not figure out the specific principle. After all, this thing was developed by a high-end intellectual professor like Fanduo after decades of research, and the technological level of the world is also far higher than other worlds Garen has experienced, and Garen is not very clear about this annihilation phenomenon. Seeing this scene, he, who was not very interested in this move at first, suddenly became interested. That energy seems powerful. Try again. Garen put on his posture, and slowly and focusedly began to follow teacher Fanduo's instructions step by step to combine vibration, frequency of consciousness, and a certain amount of will and spiritual guidance, spirit, consciousness, body chi, and blood flow, and his own movements. The four parts began to slowly combine, deform, and condense, forming invisible symbols and vortices. These symbol vortices began to be further combined and arranged to form small pyramids. The total formed 3 invisible pyramids, arranged in a triangle, suspended in front of Garen. Blackwind. Call. A subtle black airflow appeared, and the 3 pyramids collapsed at the same time, turning into black wind and blowing in the fan-shaped direction in front. Still within a range of more than 1 meter, the black wind edge slowly disappeared. Garen opened his mouth, but suddenly his eyes went black, and he staggered, almost falling to the ground. Fortunately, he quickly reached out and grabbed a chair next to him. What a huge consumption! He was secretly shocked. With my physical fitness and inner level 5 consciousness, I only released it twice and it didn't work. My body was overdrawn and my energy and blood were severely depleted. After resting for a few minutes, Garen recovered and regained some strength. He once again wanted to try to release the black wind, but unfortunately, he did not have enough energy to use this move. For a whole day, all his interest was attracted by this trick taught by Professor Fan Duo. I began to delve into it tirelessly, trying to figure out what kind of mystery this move had. Villa second floor. Fan Duo was smoking slowly with his pipe, and from time to time, eye circles were sprayed out from his nostrils. The shapes were intact, one after another, and he looked very happy. He was sitting alone in the study, with a translucent circular screen erected on the table in front of him, which displayed the image of another person, a white-haired old man dressed meticulously and wearing a black suit. Still studying the structure of glazed fire, Fan Duo asked casually. "Don't you also want to take your wind of annihilation further?" The old man in a suit replied calmly. 3 stages, black wind, death wind, and annihilation wind. Your eagle talon should have reached the peak of the double moon level, right? Fan Duo smiled. It's a pity. If Painting's claws can break through to level 6, and then push the wind of annihilation, the power will definitely rise to a terrifying level. The fit between the two is really too high. You still haven't given up after all these years, otherwise you would have reached the 7th level without falling, the old man in a suit said calmly. Back then, you were claimed to be invincible within 2 meters. The wind of annihilation in close combat spread throughout the hospital, except for the 3 big ones. Except for professors, no one is your opponent, but now, look at how many people who were originally inferior to you have slowly reached your level or even surpassed you. Do you still want to persuade me to give up? Fan Duo took a deep puff on his pipe, letting the tobacco from the cigarette end light up. I've told you so many times that I don't even bother to talk to you, the old man in a black suit breathed out. The batch of materials you want has been sent to the inner courtyard warehouse and can be picked up at any time. There are suicine that I worked hard to find. Stone. Thank you, Fan Duo smiled. For so many years, I have relied on you to help me collect the year star stones. If you have any trouble, just ask. You're welcome. Although my old bones are not as good as they used to be, they still have some effect. If the wind of annihilation Fan Duo has no effect, then no one in the inner courtyard will dare to say that it is useful. The old man in the black suit also laughed. It's okay. The 2 children I sent to you have received it? Well, is it the last bloodline of that family? Yeah. I still went a step too late. Like the child in the ruins last time, he died from the impact of the forbidden mecha fragments. This time, you may really need to take action at the critical moment. My style is in the radiation belt. My control is not as good as yours, and the radiation belt around the black disk domain has been very variable recently. You just go ahead and do it, as long as you know that I, the Black Annihilation Sect, will always stand behind you. Don't worry about it. At worst, I will go to the Aurora domain to find my senior brothers and the others, Fan Duo said with a smile. It's still comfortable for a big inheritance sect like you. You never fight alone. The old man in black suit sighed. The 2 old men couldn't help but burst out laughing. Okay, that's it. I have some things to deal with here. I'll leave those 2 kids to you. They have good talents, so I picked them out and sent them to you. After all, the conditions there are better than mine. Much better. New. The screen suddenly disconnected. The light suddenly dissipated, revealing a virtual screen projected onto it. Fan Duo still had the smile on his face, but suddenly his expression changed and the smile suddenly disappeared. It seemed like I felt something. Just now, it seemed like someone released the wave of black wind. Is it Galov? His inherited killing skills are never hidden, because the difficulty of releasing them is far beyond the imagination of ordinary pilots. Among them the calculations involved and the coordination between spirit, blood, consciousness, and movements are very precise. Even if the pilots are let go to learn together, they can't release even a little bit of black wind fluctuations, let alone it is the entity of black wind. Fan Duo frowns slightly. Don't you know that using black wind in the villa is likely to damage the building? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 883. Pick up Hill for me, he ordered calmly. Dear Master, Hill is here to serve you. The intelligence center slowly formed a vague black humanoid shape on the table. Glove, Kajur, and Ernst are all back. No, Master. Gallifrey, I went out to the training ground to teach 2 new children. Ernst went out to drink with friends and may have to come back later. Only Connell is in the villa now, Hill answered honestly. It's him. Forget it, he has always been calm and measured. Fan Duo nodded and said no more. Black wind, as the basic assessment standard for truly entering his sex inheritance school, is very difficult. Even the 3 disciples who have already started will not use this move so easily. Presumably Kanjil also had his own considerations in using this. As for the new students in other villas, those students can only be regarded as apprentices in Fan Duo's mind at best. They are still under observation. Want to use black wind? Wait another 10 or 8 years to see if there is a chance. It took a genius like him 3 months to release the first black wind, and then he passed out. As for the apprentices in the villa, because the 2 parties only have a trading relationship, only those who can use the black wind wave can be regarded as his apprentices. And after decades of such people, he has only received 3 people, and it is these 3 a disciple. And it was not received on the Black Disk. The Black Annihilation sect is a large inheritance sect that spans several domains. It has many masters and strong ones. Even the major domain lords do not dare to look down upon it. It is the most powerful top genre in this area. As long as Hefeng can release waves without having a real entity, he can be regarded as an entry-level disciple of the Black Annihilation sect. In the Black Annihilation sect, as long as you use the black wind wave within a month, you are considered a true top genius. Those are the top elites who will be inspected for qualifications as leader of the sect immediately. As long as there are no major moral problems, being the faction leader or Fengshen general is just a matter of hammering nails into the door, there is nothing to say. Soon, another wave of fluctuations came out. This wave was so subtle that only top masters like Fan Duo could feel it. This time he smiled. This time the fluctuations of the black wind were much weaker. Sure enough, Kanjil had his own sense of proportion. He patted the tabletop and was about to turn on the monitoring of Cognier's training room. Each disciple had his own independent training room. But think about it and forget it. It's better to respect the disciples' privacy. I looked at the sky outside and saw that the artificial sun had a subtle yellowish sheen. It's time for afternoon tea. Hill, make arrangements to go to the tea restaurant. Understood. The teleportation has been arranged, Hill replied quickly. Fan Duo stood up, took off his black coat from the hanger and put it on. The door opened automatically. He strode out and walked to a small single room at the stairs on the 2nd floor. There was a cylindrical silver-white cylinder inside. The interior of the cylinder is filled with dense electric blue light lines, with a pattern resembling a blue eye slowly rotating in the center. Fan Duo walked up to the cylinder. Aha! There was a flash of blue electricity. Woohoo! Woohoo! Suddenly, a rapid alarm sounded in the villa. What's going on? Fan Duo hadn't teleported away yet. His face darkened. Hill, he felt the fluctuation of the black wind again. It was the black wind that destroyed the superconducting circuit environment on the wall. Hill quickly appeared next to him. Connell, this kid. Fan Duo frowned and strode out of the teleportation room. Before he could even get down the stairs, he saw Connell coming up the stairs with a surprised look on his face. Teacher, the blond man who looked very calm, had just opened his mouth when he saw Fan Duo's face was downcast. How many times have I told you, when using Black Wind, you must pay attention to the range, pay attention to the range, you laugh. Suddenly another wave of black wind flashed past. Fan Duo's expression suddenly froze, and the expression on Kanjil's face suddenly paused. The two blinked and looked at each other for a long time. Did you use Black Wind just now? Fan Duo lowered his voice and asked cautiously. Isn't the teacher using it? Kong Nir's expression was very interesting. He was puzzled and surprised. This handsome young man looked completely confused. So, the two of them are back, Fan Duo frowned, thought for a while, and then continued to ask cautiously. No, I just went to their training room, but there was no one there, so I came up to see if it was you. Teacher Kanil couldn't say any more. He and Fan Duo's eyes met, and they suddenly stopped talking. The other person's eyes read a guess that was closest to the truth. Hill, Fan Duo yelled. Exist. Hill was so frightened that he quickly appeared next to the two of them. Which training room was in use just now? Take me there. Hurry, Fan Duo didn't care about anything else and gave instructions like a barrage of fire. Yes, Hill was so frightened that he quickly floated down. The master and the apprentice quickly followed behind, and the speed of the three of them was almost enough to bring out the after image. In a few blinks of an eye, they arrived at the door of a training room. The door is locked, Kanil pushed but didn't push it open. Bang! Fan Duo kicked him over. The door opened wide, and Hill watched blankly as the two rushed in and yelled. No one is allowed to move. Put your hands up. Fan Duo roared and rushed in. At first sight, he saw a strange figure standing blankly in the middle of the training room, looking at the two people. He rushed in with a look of astonishment. His eyes moved instantly and fell on the subtle fluctuation still blowing slightly on the man's hand. That's the Black Wind wave. The expressions of the two people are so wonderful. Kanjil, who had always been steady, could no longer remain calm and started to speak dirty words. The fluctuation just now? Was it caused by your kid? Fan Duo's voice felt like it was trembling. He felt that human language could no longer express his excitement and anxiety at this time. Garen stared at the two of them blankly, nodding his head slightly up and down. Bang! Two big hands slapped him hard on the shoulders. Then he saw the usually dull teacher looking at him affectionately. Thousands of words, all condensed into this one curse word. After an hour of cross-examination, the master and apprentice of Fan Duo Kanil brought Garen to the encrypted conference room, blocked all possibilities of sound leakage, and finally figured out the whole story. It turned out that Garen really only planned to use Black Wind to try, but he didn't expect that the power after using it was beyond his imagination, so he began to study the specific recovery time limit to see how long he could recover to use Black Wind. Unexpectedly, the next few attempts were unsuccessful, and he only used basic weak waves. He didn't care much about this weak wave, thinking that the power was very weak, but he didn't expect that this wave actually touched the wall without paying attention. It corroded a big hole and even damaged various circuits that glowed blue inside. Then came the process of Fan Duo and the others being shocked. After asking everything, he looked at Nono Siwa, who was sitting in his seat with a straight face. This kid didn't even grow the green hair on his mouth. Fan Duo and Kanjil had mixed feelings. Their throats were rolling, but they couldn't speak. After brewing for a while, Fan Duo finally spoke. Are you sure you have never been exposed to black-style killing techniques before? Yes, Teacher Garen nodded. You can easily find out my family background. Yeah. Fan Duo looked at this young man with a calm face, recalling the pain and entanglement he had when he was training Black Wind. He often even had headaches and couldn't sleep at night because of overuse of his brain. Look at this kid again, he has a relaxed look on his face. Not only did he do it once, but he did it a second time. And he even tried to do it for the third and fourth time in one day. The tangle in Fanduo's heart was like thousands of grass and mud horses whizzing by. I glanced at the disciple Kanil next to me. This guy was rubbing his temples with his eyes closed and a pained expression on his face. "Can you still release the black wind now?" Fanduo asked in a soft voice. "I'm afraid not, this move is too taxing on the body." Garen shook his head. "No entity is needed, just a little fluctuation will do. The consumption is very small," Fanduo said carefully. "No problem." Garen stood up, and his fingers began to twist and intertwine to make quick, precise, and extremely complex gestures. At the same time, his consciousness turned into threads and continued to be entangled and released. In conjunction with this, his body's energy, blood, and spirit also began to concentrate. The four combined to form a strange rune. Symbols and runes are continuously produced one after another. These runes are all the optimal modeling combination method after many calculations. One is linked to the next. As long as one is not cohesive, it will affect the generation of the next. Then it fell short. Over time, the first pyramids appeared. A few minutes later a second pyramid appeared, then a third. At the moment when the third pyramid was about to end, the three of them shattered suddenly, and traces of transparent waves of black wind suddenly blew out. Fanduo opened his hand, and an invisible force of consciousness suddenly enveloped the black wind wave. He squeezed it gently and annihilated it. He stared at Garen with complicated eyes. "I never thought that I would meet such a terrifyingly talented student in my lifetime." Alaskanjil on the side couldn't help sighing. Compared with this junior brother, his qualifications are nothing different from shit. It took several years to successfully release the fluctuations, and the difference in hardness was greater than the difference in hardness between stone and tofu. At this time, Garen had almost guessed the key points of the teacher's performance. The difficulty of black wind was indeed very high. He expected that it might cause fluctuations, but he did not expect that it would cause such big consequences. "Are you willing to officially join our Black Oblivion sect?" Fanduo gathered his mood and asked Garen formally and solemnly. Black Annihilation Faction. Garen heard the name of the sect for the first time. In this world, it seems that the ruling areas are divided by domains, but in fact there are aggregations of forces divided by factions. Fanduo explained carefully. Inherited schools are the truly terrifying powerful forces. Anyone the lowest level of the inheritance school is level 6, because only level 6 pilots who can be worthy of being an inheritance are qualified to be called inheritance level. The Black Annihilation sect is the inherited sect. Well, it is the second-rank super sect in the Black Pan territory or Aura territory. We have a lot of experts in the Black Disk territory, including 6th level masters and above. The leader of the sect was the 7th level top-notch sect many years ago. Has the black famous star of the equivalent mecha. And he is not our strongest inherited pilot. You will know these things in the future. As long as you know clearly, the strength of our genre is second to none in the Black Disk domain and the Aurora domain. Basically no one in the world dares not to give us face, Fanduo said with a little pride. Besides the Black Annihilation faction, are there any other factions? Garen asked carefully. Yes, but these two domains are mainly our territory. Fanduo waved his hand. The schools exist more in the form of academies. The Black Pan Academy in the Black Pan domain is actually a school for us, and the Black Pan section the mechanism for selecting top disciples, after screening by the outer courtyard, is the inner courtyard. After the cruel competition in the inner courtyard, the strongest group can become the successors of the inheritance level as long as they enter the 6th level. Of course, geniuses like you can be an exception. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 884. Genius, Garen frowned. Maybe you are mistaken, teacher, and my qualifications may not be very good. As long as your qualifications are not too bad, you can use resources to pile them up. The biggest difficulty for our Black Annihilation faction is that the resonance skill is too difficult. Many so-called geniuses with good qualifications cannot handle it well. It is possible to learn Black Annihilation in 1 year. Feng, you are considered a key protection target. I know your qualifications, although they are a bit lacking, but the resources are still nothing. Fan Duo waved his hand and said nonchalantly. As expected of a big sect, he is indeed very wealthy. Garen felt relieved. I have a question, teacher. Explain. Garen collected his thoughts. Regarding the correspondence between training method consciousness and mecha. Since one consciousness can only correspond to one mecha, isn't the other deputy consciousness useless? Can't it break through to the inheritance level? That's right. Only one mecha can resonate, and a mecha can only have one kind of consciousness. There's nothing we can do about it. Modifying the consciousness training method also requires chain modifications to the mecha structure in order to adjust the resonance. Fan Duo nodded. Our Black Annihilation sect, the strongest Black Annihilation wind training method, is like this, and can only be used for the Black Annihilation flow mechas of our section. Only then did Kanjil come back to his senses and stared at Garen with a complicated expression. The teacher originally created the Eagle Claw in order to find a training method more suitable for Black Annihilation style of killing techniques. The Eagle Talon was actually created by the teacher. Garen was really shocked now. How old is this old guy? It is said that the Eagle Talon was circulated more than 200 years ago, and the genius at that time simulated fighting skills in Painting Talon's quantum computer. Maybe he's about the same age as me. Garen took a sneak peek at the old man and found something unusual. The old man's skin seemed a little stiff. There was no faint heartbeat visible in my chest, and even my breathing felt overly regular. Okay boy, let me first let you know the specific situation now. Now that you have joined our Black Annihilation sect, you can ignore most of the masters in the Black Disk domain and the Aurora domain. At least you will suppress them in public. But there are still some people you can't afford to offend temporarily. The smile on Fan Duo's face became deeper and deeper. With a flick of his finger, a large map appeared on the table between the three of them. The map was woven with countless blue lines, forming the 4 major maps of the entire Black Disk domain, the Aurora domain, the Maria domain and the Spiral Tooth domain. The mountains and rivers are clearly visible on it, and it is extremely lifelike and delicate. If the color were not all blue, it would probably be no different from a real 3-dimensional sand table overlooking the sky. Fan Duo pointed at the center of the map. This is the Black Disk domain where we are. With a whine, a red area lit up on the map. The words Black Disk are displayed above. The other side further away is the Aurora domain. He points again. The area that borders the Black Disk domain only a little extends out, and another oval-shaped area lights up, all displayed in red. There are 3 UN and 1 star in the Black Disk domain, which refers to the 3 great professors, the old immortals who control the entire Black Disk, plus a black star. You cannot afford to offend these people. Be careful. Especially Black Star Dio. That kid Faye is very strong and ruthless. He may smile with you on the surface, but behind his back he can cut a knife faster than anyone else. Garen nodded to express his understanding. The main thing in the Black Pan territory is that these people should not take the initiative to provoke me. Others will give me some face. Fan Duo warned. Then there is the Aurora domain. He moved his finger to the area of the Aurora domain. This is the headquarters of our Black Annihilation section. There are 2 things you need to pay attention to. First, the 12 Wind God Generals. The Wind God Generals are the title of the strongest combat power of our Black Annihilation section. Some of them are even stronger than the leader of the section. Don't mess with us. We also have factions within the Black Annihilation section. You have to understand that wherever there are people, there will be cliques. Especially when there are too many people, there will always be relatively big differences between people. Maybe it's about ideas. Maybe it's personality, or even hobbies, etc., the closeness and distance produced in this way will naturally be different. Then when conflicts occasionally arise, they will naturally be divided into different factions. Garen continued what Van Duo said, indicating that he understood. As long as you understand, Van Duo nodded with satisfaction. Of course there are factions close to us among the 12 wind god generals, and my teacher Osiris is one of them. Clear. Garen nodded. The 3 elements and 1 star in the Black Disk domain and the 12 wind god generals in the Aurora domain are both taboo-like existences. Their own strength is enough to overcome most troubles and problems. This is what teacher Van Duo wants to advise. The second is Maria domain. Swana, who is known as Zero Gun, just run away when you encounter her. They have a 7-member choir, all of them are crazy and are famous for being unreasonable. Don't mess with them at the inheritance level. What you need to pay attention to in Luoyang domain is the genre of spiral tower. Others don't matter. People in this genre are religious lunatics. It's common for them to self-destruct if they can't beat them. Compared to those in white light, I feel that the people in spiral tower more like terrorists. The others are just ordinary academic students. There is nothing to be careful about. With your sophistication, it shouldn't be a problem. Garen remembered them one by one, the 3 UN and 1 star in the Black Plate domain, the 12 wind god generals in the Aurora domain, the Zero Gun Swana in the Maria domain, and the Spiral Tower in the Spiral Fang domain. These are all things to be careful about. Van Duo was in a good mood, took out his pipe and started lighting it again. Of course, you don't have to be too careful. The manpower of these forces is usually dispatched once every few years, even if it is frequent, because when they reach a certain level, just like Black Star Diophy, they need to look for various materials and technologies that are most suitable for them. Constantly devouring mechas that evolve themselves. When laying the foundation for the 6th level inheritance level, their time activity cycle is far beyond that of ordinary people. Although it seems that there are many of these people, in fact, in such a large territory, they are generally he is always looking for resources outside and rarely comes back. Unless something big happens, it is normal for him not to show up for more than 10 years just for Liangxuan. Garen nodded in understanding. Kongnir added on the side. Anyway, I have been a disciple of the teacher for so many years. In the past 10 years, I have only met one member of the Maria Domain's choir, and they only looked at each other from a distance before leaving. The more active ones in the domain are mainly from the outer courtyard. There are a small number of elite students and inner courtyards, and those active in the interdomain radiation belt are often the real elite students of the inner courtyard level in each domain, such as teams like the Black Cloth Generals. Only in truly strategically important locations, there will often be people like us are stationed in the inner courtyard from the upper echelons. That is to say, those who reach the level of senior brother are often stationed at the level of generals to garrison important strongholds. Garen understood. Yes, this level is usually at the 5th level new moon, which is the lowest. Kanjil nodded. Suddenly he received a text message on his watch, looked down and frowned slightly. There is an assassination order against you posted on zooxin.com. Have you offended some big shot? No. Heart-killing network. Well, it's a killer network, and I occasionally work part-time on it to make extra money. Kanjil nodded. The publisher is unknown, but the bounty is 100 million universal points, which is not a small number. Van Duo on the other side looked unhappy. Heart-killing network. He opened his mouth and was about to say something, but immediately seemed to realize something and calmed down. It is not appropriate to expose Nono's background to us now. Before he has his own unique mecha, the risk factor is too high. Teacher, are you saying that some people may take action? Kongnir also frowned, his face serious. Obviously some people are not so easy to deal with, at least much more difficult than the 100 million reward offered by zooxin.com. Most likely, they don't want our faction to become stronger. As long as no one knows about it, they won't have any scruples. Fan Duo stood up, walked around the room, and kept pacing. After a few minutes, he suddenly stopped. We can't expose Nono's qualifications, just let him become an ordinary disciple, but... He turned his palm over, and a translucent plastic-like square suddenly appeared in his palm. Take this. He handed the translucent cube to Garen. This is... Garen caught the small square, which looked like a palm-sized glass brick. It was slightly heavy, but the texture was not hard, but very soft. Gently pinch it and it will sink in. Flickering Fan Duo said seriously, I left a legacy-level consciousness knife inside, which is equivalent to the 6th level of non-resonance. It can be used 3 times. When you encounter non-legacy level opponents, you can use it. This thing's explosion can turn defeat into victory, and its specific power is equivalent to being a little weaker than the 5th level double moon level full outburst resonance skill. It's enough to protect you. Garen nodded solemnly. Obviously such a thing was very precious, otherwise Fan Duo wouldn't have thought about it for a while before taking it out. Just look at the envious expression on the face of senior brother Conil next to him. Thank you, teacher. If it weren't for the fact that this thing can only store the consciousness of this upper limit of power. Fan Duo breathed out, okay, now it's time to test your specific situation. How to test? Before Garen finished speaking, he saw a blur in front of his eyes. His body was suddenly patted on the shoulders and vest 3 times. Even with his reaction speed, he could not catch up with the opponent. By the time he reacted, he had already been patted 3 times. Down. Watching Fan Duo reappear in front of his eyes. This feeling is very strange. I can clearly recall that teacher Fan Duo slapped his hands 3 times, but I can't catch the time gap of these slaps. It feels like it was completed in an instant, but if I look carefully, it seems like come over and pat 3 times at will.